My name's Sarah, and if you're reading this, I guess you're about to hear the story of my life. Or at least the part that changed everything. I'm not sure where to start because even now, sitting here in my little apartment in a quiet suburb outside Chicago, my hands shake when I think about it. This isn't just a story, it's a confession, a reckoning with the choices I made and the feelings I couldn't bury, no matter how hard I tried. I'm not proud of everything I've done, but I'm tired of hiding it. So here it is, raw and real, the way it happened. I grew up in a pretty typical American neighborhood. Think cul-de-sacs, kids riding bikes, and barbecues in the summer. My mom, Laura, raised me mostly on her own after my dad left when I was 6. She's the kind of woman who lights up a room, always laughing, always planning the next girls' night out or book club meeting. She's a real estate agent, good at her job, but honestly, she's always been more devoted to her friends than to anything else. Don't get me wrong, I love her, but growing up, I often felt like I was competing for her attention. When I was 16, Mom met James. He's an architect, the kind of guy who doesn't need to say much to make you notice him. Tall, broad-shouldered, with this quiet confidence that just pulls you in. He's in his late 40s now, with a touch of gray in his hair. But back then, he was this magnetic presence, someone who could walk into a room and own it without trying. Mom was smitten, and they got married a year later. I was happy for her, I guess, but James and I never really clicked. He was polite, always called me kid, or Sarah, in that calm, steady voice of his, but there was this wall between us. He wasn't my dad, and I wasn't his daughter. We just coexisted, sharing the same house but living separate lives. Our house was one of those 2-story colonials you see all over the Midwest. White siding, black shutters, a big backyard with a deck. It was comfortable, the kind of place where you'd expect family dinners and game nights, but that wasn't us. Mom was always out, showing houses or grabbing drinks with her friends. James worked late, sketching designs in his home office or meeting clients downtown. Me? I was in my early 20s, taking classes at the community college, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I spent a lot of time in my room, scrolling through my phone or staring out the window, wondering if this was all there was. Looking back, I think I was lonely. Not the kind of lonely where you don't have friends. I had a few, mostly from high school, but the kind where you feel like no one really sees you. Mom was too busy, my friends were starting their own lives, and James, well, he was just there, a fixture in the house, like the oak tree in the front yard. I never thought much about him, not in any real way, until that one evening when everything changed. It was a Thursday, I think, one of those warm spring nights where the air smells like fresh grass and possibility. Mom was out, as usual, at some wine and paint night with her girlfriends. The house was quiet, just the hum of the fridge and the occasional chirp of crickets outside. I was in my room, standing in front of my mirror, trying on a new top I'd bought. I was in my underwear, humming some song I can't even remember now, when I heard the door creak open. My heart stopped. I turned, and there was James, standing in the doorway, his hand still on the knob. "Sarah, your door's open," he said, his voice low, steady, but with this edge I couldn't place. His eyes met mine, and for a split second, they lingered on me, on my bare skin, before he looked away. I didn't move, didn't cover myself. I just stood there, frozen, my pulse hammering in my ears. "Sorry," he muttered, stepping back, closing the door behind him. But the way he said it, the way his gaze had held mine just a moment too long, it didn't feel like a simple mistake. That moment, those few seconds, flipped a switch inside me. I couldn't shake it. The way he looked at me, The way my body felt under his gaze, I told myself it was nothing, just an awkward accident. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. That night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I felt something shift, something dangerous and undeniable. It was the beginning of everything, the start of a story I never meant to write. And now, I'm going to tell you the rest, every messy, complicated detail, because I can't keep it inside anymore. That moment, with James in my doorway, kept replaying in my head like a song stuck on loop. I'd close my eyes and see his face, the way his gaze lingered just a beat too long, the way his voice sounded when he said my name. I told myself to let it go. It was just a mistake, a clumsy moment that happens when you live in the same house. But every time I passed him in the kitchen or heard his footsteps on the stairs, my stomach did this little flip, and I hated myself for it. This was James, my mom's husband, for God's sake. I wasn't supposed to feel anything. A few days later, Mom dragged us to a wedding for her friend Karen, who was getting hitched for the second time. It was one of those big, fancy affairs at a country club just outside the city, with fairy lights strung up everywhere and a band playing old jazz standards. Mom was in her element, flitting around in a sparkly dress, laughing too loud with her friends. James, though, he was different. He stood off to the side, nursing a glass of whiskey, his dark suit fitting him like it was made for him. Every now and then, I'd catch him watching the crowd, his expression calm but distant, like he was somewhere else entirely. I tried to blend into the background, sipping a soda and scrolling through my phone, but my eyes kept drifting to him. Maybe it was the lighting or the way he carried himself, but he looked, I don't know, alive in a way I hadn't noticed before. His jawline, the way his tie was just loose enough to hint at ease, it was like I was seeing him for the first time. I shook my head, muttering to myself to snap out of it. This was ridiculous. He was Mom's husband, not some guy I could crush on. Then the band started playing a slow song, and Mom, half tipsy and grinning, grabbed my arm. "Sarah, dance with James," she said, loud enough for half the room to hear. "I'm gonna go catch up with the girls for a bit." She didn't even wait for me to answer, just gave James a playful shove toward me and waltzed off to her friends. My heart sank. I wanted to disappear, but James was already standing there, his hand extended, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Come on, Sarah," he said, his voice warm, teasing. "You can't leave me hanging out here. Laura's already made me look like a fool on the dance floor." His ease, that effortless charm, made it impossible to say no. I took his hand, my fingers trembling, and let him lead me to the dance floor. The moment his hand settled on my waist, I felt like I couldn't breathe. His cologne, something woodsy and sharp, filled my senses, and his touch was firm but gentle, guiding me through the steps. The crowd around us blurred, the music fading into a hum. It was just him and me, swaying under the soft glow of the lights. I kept my eyes on his chest, too nervous to look up, but I could feel his gaze on me, steady and intense. "Sarah," he said after a moment, his voice quieter now, almost intimate. "About the other day. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. I should have knocked." My cheeks burned, and I forced myself to meet his eyes. They were dark, searching, and there was something in them I couldn't read. Regret, maybe, but also something else, something that made my pulse race. "It's okay," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. "It was an accident. No big deal." But even as I said it, I knew I was lying. It was a big deal, and the way he was looking at me now, like he could see right through me, only made it worse. He didn't say anything for a second, just kept dancing, his hand pressing a little firmer against my waist. "You're a good dancer," he said finally, his tone lightening. but his eyes didn't leave mine. I didn't expect that, I laughed. A nervous, shaky sound. I'm just trying not to step on your toes, I said, and he smiled. A real smile, warm and unguarded, that made my chest tighten. The song ended, and we stepped apart, but his hand lingered on mine for a moment longer than it should have. I pulled away, my heart pounding, and mumbled something about needing a drink. I went back to my table, my legs shaky, trying to convince myself it was just a dance, nothing more. But when I glanced back, James was watching me, his expression unreadable, and I knew something had shifted between us. Later, Mom announced she was heading to a bachelorette after party with her friends, leaving James to drive me home. The car ride was quiet, the hum of the engine filling the silence. I stared out the window, watching the streetlights blur, till James spoke. "Laura's got her own world sometimes," he said, his voice low, almost resigned. "Nights like this, you'd think she'd want to stick around, you know?" I turned to look at him, surprised by the vulnerability in his tone. "Yeah," I said softly. "I get that." He didn't say anything else, but the air in the car felt heavy, charged with something unspoken. When we got home, he held the door open for me, his eyes meeting mine for a brief, electric moment. "Good night, Sarah," he said, and I nodded, my throat tight. I went to my room, closed the door, and leaned against it, my mind racing. That night, I barely slept. The memory of his touch, his voice, his eyes burning into me. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew it wasn't over, not by a long shot. The wedding was in full swing. The kind of night where everyone's a little looser, a little louder, caught up in the glow of love and liquor. The country club's ballroom sparkled with chandeliers, and the band was playing something upbeat, filling the air with energy. I sat at our table, still reeling from the dance with James, my fingers fidgeting with the stem of my glass. His touch lingered on my skin like a phantom, and every time I glanced at him, standing across the room, chatting with some guy in a suit, I felt that same jolt, that mix of guilt and something I didn't want to name. Mom was off in her own world, twirling on the dance floor with her friends, her laugh cutting through the music. She hadn't come back to check on me since she'd pushed me into James's arms, and I couldn't decide if that made me mad or relieved. Part of me wanted her to notice, to see the way my hands shook, to pull me away from whatever this was. But another part, the part that scared me, was glad she was distracted. It gave me space to feel things I shouldn't. I tried to focus on anything else. The clink of glasses, the couples swaying, the smell of roses from the centerpieces. But my eyes kept finding James. He was leaning against a pillar now, his tie loosened, one hand in his pocket. The way he stood, so sure of himself, made my chest tighten. Had he always been this magnetic? Or was I just losing my mind? I muttered to myself to get a grip, but then he looked my way and our eyes locked. My breath caught. He didn't smile, didn't move, just held my gaze for a moment that felt like forever before turning back to his conversation. I looked down, my face burning. This was bad, really bad. The band shifted to another slow song, and before I could brace myself, Mom was back, her cheeks flushed from dancing. "Sarah, you're moping," she said, grabbing my hand. "Go dance with James again. He's all alone over there, and I'm about to steal Karen for a toast." She didn't wait for my protest, just waved James over like it was the most natural thing in the world. My stomach twisted as he walked toward us, that easy stride of his making my heart race. "Laura, you're abandoning me again?" he teased, but his eyes flicked to me, and there was something in them, something that made my pulse skip. Mom laughed, already halfway to her friends. "You'll survive, James. Take care of my girl." And just like that, she was gone, leaving me standing there, my hands clammy as James held out his hand. "Round two," he said, his voice light, but his gaze was anything but. I nodded, unable to trust my voice, and took his hand. The second his fingers closed around mine, I felt that same electric pull, stronger this time. On the dance floor, his hand found my waist, and I had to focus on breathing, on not tripping over my own feet. The music was soft, romantic, and it was like the universe was mocking me, making this moment feel too perfect, too dangerous. "You okay?" James asked, his voice low, close enough that I could feel his breath against my ear. I nodded, staring at his collar, afraid to look up. "Yeah, just not used to all this," I mumbled, hoping it sounded convincing. He chuckled, a deep, warm sound that sent a shiver down my spine. "You're doing fine, Sarah. Better than me, at least." We danced in silence for a moment, but the air between us was heavy, charged. Then he spoke again, his tone shifting, softer, more serious. "I meant what I said earlier, about the other day. I didn't mean to cross a line." My heart pounded. I forced myself to meet his eyes, and what I saw there, intensity, sincerity, and something else, something raw, made my knees weak. "It's fine," I said, my voice shaking. "Really, it was just one of those things." But it wasn't, and we both knew it. His hand tightened slightly on my waist, and I felt my body lean into him, just a fraction, before I caught myself. "Sarah," he said, almost a whisper, "you don't have to pretend it was nothing. I saw the way you looked at me." My breath hitched. I wanted to deny it, to laugh it off, but the words wouldn't come. He was right, and the truth of it terrified me. The song ended, and we stopped moving, but neither of us let go right away. His eyes searched mine, and for a moment I thought he might say something more, something that would shatter the fragile line we were walking. But then he stepped back, his hand falling away, and gave me a small, almost sad smile. "Thanks for the dance," he said, and walked off to join another group. Leaving me standing there, my heart hammering, I stumbled back to my table, my mind a mess. What was happening to me? This wasn't just a crush. It was something deeper, something wrong, and yet I couldn't stop it. When Mom announced she was heading to the bachelorette party and James would drive me home, I felt a mix of dread and anticipation. The car ride was quiet, but his words from earlier echoed in my head. And I knew this wasn't over. Whatever was between us was growing, and I was too caught up to turn back. The car ride home from the wedding was suffocating. The silence between James and me wasn't just quiet. It was alive, pulsing with everything we weren't saying. I kept my eyes glued to the window, watching the streetlights streak by, but my mind was stuck on him. The way his hand felt on my waist, the way his voice dropped when he said my name. I wanted to scream at myself to stop, to shove these feelings down where they belonged, but they were clawing their way out, and I was losing the fight. When we pulled into the driveway, the house was dark. Mom still out with her friends, probably laughing over cocktails without a second thought about us. James turned off the engine, and for a moment, neither of us moved. The air felt thick, like the world was holding its breath. "Good night, Sarah," he said finally, his voice low, but he didn't open his door. I nodded, mumbled something back, and bolted inside, my heart pounding like I'd just run a marathon. I needed space, distance, anything to clear my head. Up in my room, I paced, the hardwood creaking under my feet. I kept replaying everything. The doorway, incident, the dances, his words in the car about Mom not noticing him. It wasn't just about him being lonely. It was about me, about the way he saw me. like I was more than just Laura's kid. I sat on the edge of my bed, my hands twisting in my lap, trying to talk myself down. He's your stepdad, Sarah. This is wrong. You're imagining things. But the truth was, I wasn't imagining the way he looked at me, the way his touch lingered. And God help me, I didn't want to stop feeling it. Hours passed, and the house stayed quiet. Mom hadn't come home, and I had no idea where James was. Probably in his office, sketching, or maybe asleep. I lay back on my bed, staring at the ceiling, but sleep wouldn't come. My mind was a storm, and every thought led back to him. Then, just as I was starting to drift, I heard it. A soft knock, followed by the faint creak of my door opening. My heart stopped. I sat up, and there was James, standing in the doorway, his silhouette framed by the hallway light. "Sarah," he said, his voice rough, like he'd been wrestling with himself. "Can I come in?" I couldn't speak, couldn't think. I just nodded, my throat tight. He closed the door behind him, the click echoing in the silence, and took a step closer. His face was a mix of determination and something else. Guilt, maybe, or fear. "I shouldn't be here," he said, running a hand through his hair. "I know that, but I can't stop thinking about you. Not since that day in your room. Not since tonight." My breath caught, and I stood, my legs shaky. "James, what are you saying?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He took another step, close enough now that I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his eyes searched mine. "I'm saying I feel something for you," he said, each word deliberate, like it cost him to say it. "Something I shouldn't. And I think you feel it too." The room spun. I wanted to deny it, to tell him he was wrong, but the truth was burning in me, and I was tired of fighting it. "You're married to my mom," I said, my voice cracking. It's not right." He nodded, his expression pained. "I know, believe me, I know, but when I'm around you, it's like nothing else matters. You see me, Sarah, Laura doesn't. She hasn't in a long time." His words hit me like a punch, and before I could stop myself, I felt my resolve crumble. I stepped closer, my hands trembling, and let the straps of my dress slip off my shoulders. The fabric pooled at my feet, leaving me exposed, vulnerable but unafraid. "I haven't stopped thinking about you either," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos inside me. "I tried, James. I tried so hard, but I can't." For a moment, he just stared, his eyes dark with something raw and unguarded. Then he closed the distance between us, his hands cupping my face, his touch gentle but electric. "Sarah," he murmured, and then his lips were on mine, and everything else, the guilt, the fear, the world outside, disappeared. The kiss was hungry, desperate, like we'd both been holding back too long. I clung to him, my fingers digging into his shoulders, and when he pulled back, his eyes were blazing. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice hoarse. I nodded, my heart pounding. "I'm sure." He kissed me again, deeper this time, and I let myself fall, guiding him toward the bed. His hands moved to his shirt, buttoning it with deliberate care, and when he joined me, the weight of his body, the warmth of his skin, felt like the only real thing in the world. We moved together, lost in each other, every touch a release of everything. The room was quiet now, save for the soft rhythm of James's breathing beside me. I lay with my head on his chest, his heartbeat steady under my cheek, grounding me in a moment that felt both like a dream and a nightmare. His arm was draped around me, his fingers tracing slow, absent patterns on my shoulder. The air still carried the warmth of what we'd done, but the weight of it was settling in, heavy and unyielding. I wanted to stay here, frozen in this bubble where it was just us. But reality was creeping back, and with it, a storm of guilt and fear. I shifted slightly, my fingers brushing across his chest, and he tilted his head to look at me. His eyes were softer now, but there was a shadow in them, like he was wrestling with the same thoughts I was. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low, rough from the intensity of everything. I nodded, but it was a lie, and he knew it. I could feel it in the way his hand tightened around me, like he was afraid I'd slip away. "James," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't an accident, was it?" I lifted my head to meet his gaze, needing to hear the truth, even if it scared me. He didn't look away, didn't flinch. "No," he said, his tone steady but heavy. "It wasn't. I've been fighting this for weeks, Sarah, trying to tell myself it was nothing, that I could keep it locked away, but tonight, I couldn't. I had to tell you." His honesty hit me hard, and I felt my throat tighten. I wanted to be angry, to blame him for crossing that line, but I'd crossed it too. I'd wanted this as much as he did, maybe more. I sat up, pulling the sheet around me, suddenly aware of how exposed I felt. Not just physically, but in every way. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Mom's gonna come home. They'll find out. What do we do?" James sat up too, his jaw tight, and for the first time, I saw uncertainty in him, the man who always seemed so sure. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. "I don't know," he admitted, and the rawness in his voice made my chest ache. "All I know is that us, right here, it feels real. More real than anything I felt in a long time." He reached for my hand, his fingers lacing through mine, and the warmth of his touch pulled me back, even as my mind screamed to run. "Real?" I echoed, a bitter edge creeping into my voice. "James, you're married to my mom. This isn't some romance novel. It's wrong." The words tasted like ash, but I had to say them, had to remind myself of the line we'd obliterated. His eyes darkened, and he nodded, but he didn't let go of my hand. "I know it's wrong," he said. "I've spent every day telling myself that. But when I'm with you, Sarah, it's like I can breathe again. Like I'm not just going through the motions." I wanted to argue, to push him away, but his words sank into me, stirring up the loneliness I'd been carrying for years. Mom's absence, her endless nights out, had left a void, and James had filled it in a way I never expected. I leaned into him, my forehead resting against his shoulder, and for a moment we just sat there. The silence heavy with everything we couldn't say. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway snapped me out of it. My heart lurched, and I pulled back, panic flooding me. "Mom," I whispered, my eyes wide. James tense, but his voice stayed calm. "It's okay," he said, though I could hear the strain. "She's probably drunk, won't even notice anything. Just stay here." He stood, grabbing his shirt from the floor, and started buttoning it with quick, practiced movements. But before he left, he turned back, his eyes locking onto mine. "We'll figure this out, Sarah. I promise." He slipped out, closing the door softly behind him, and I was alone again, the room feeling too big, too empty. I pulled my knees to my chest, my mind racing. I could hear Mom's voice downstairs, loud and slurred, followed by James's low, steady replies. Everything sounded normal, like nothing had changed, but everything had. I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross, and the worst part was I didn't know if I wanted to. Lying back, I stared at the ceiling, the memory of James's touch still burning on my skin. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, whether We'd pretend this never happened or if it would consume us both. All I knew was that I was in too deep, caught in a current I couldn't fight. And as much as it terrified me, part of me didn't want to.